Like a slow-motion car crash, the US and Israel's multiple attacks on Iran are morphing into a third Gulf War. Since signing a ceasefire deal, which on paper at least recognized Iran's sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz and forced Israel to cease all military operations in Lebanon, Donald Trump has reversed out of both commitments and back into full-scale war. Both Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu got a bad reception at home for the ceasefire deal negotiated by Pakistan. Trump because he actually signed it, and Netanyahu because he was cut out of it, and it felt that a premature peace had been imposed on Israel by its ally and chief armourer. Neither man could justify a deal that was seen as a capitulation. Both face imminent elections and regard the war as a matter of personal political survival. Each are stuck in a doom loop of their own making. As soon as their claims to have obliterated Iran's missiles were shown to be bogus, the only option was to go back and start the whole operation all over again. War Secretary Pete Hegseth told reporters in April that Iran's missile program was functionally destroyed and with launchers and missiles depleted and decimated and almost completely ineffective. The strike on the Muwafaq Salti air base on Friday that killed 3 US service members was probably carried out by the Haibar Sheikhan medium-range system, the very missile system Hegseth claimed to have destroyed in April. Iran never saw the ceasefire as anything other than a chance for the US to restock and rearm. It said that if it was attacked again, it would make the US troops stationed in the region pay, and it has. Nearly 100 US troops have been injured in the last 2 weeks. 3 have been killed in a missile strike on US bases in Iraq and Jordan, and multiple Black Hawk helicopters have been disabled at Muwafaq in Jordan. Iran is now doing to Trump what the US president thought he could do to Tehran, to strong-arm it into surrendering its nuclear enrichment program and its regional network of allies. It's using strikes on shipping and its Gulf neighbors, even the ones like Qatar that mediated the first ceasefire deal, as levers to coerce Trump into a weaker position at the negotiating table. Trump and Netanyahu relished their tactic of mixing bombing with talking and bragging about targeting the negotiating teams themselves. Now the same tactic is being used back at them. Iran is deliberately widening the battlefield to include Saudi Arabia and Yemen, countries that got off relatively lightly in the first 30 days of the US attack on Iran. The IRGC said that if it was attacked again, it would widen the scope of the war, with an instruction to its allies in Yemen, Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, to close the mouth of the Red Sea. Accordingly, hostilities have reopened between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia. This now brings another choke point in global maritime shipping lanes into the war. On Wednesday, the Houthis claimed to have attacked 2 Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea, and at least 6 others were known to have turned around rather than run the Houthi gauntlet. Step by step, Iran is raising the global cost of Trump's war. US petrol prices have immediately risen back to above $4 a gallon. With the closure of the Red Sea, this means that 3 of the world's key routes for exporting oil, the Black Sea, the Persian Gulf, and now the Red Sea, are closed. European gas prices surged 50% as heat waves and the traditional time for stocking up for winter are all affecting demand. Markets were not as affected in March and April because demand was low. Now it's not. It looks like Groundhog Day for Trump, but in the last few weeks, he's been surging forces, medics and weaponry into the area for what looks like a campaign of ground operations. He returned to his Situation Room to discuss the potential seizure of Karg Island, Iran's main oil temple, bombing the tunnel complex at Pickaxe Mountain, and expanding his target list in Iran to include energy sites. But in the 4 months since he and Netanyahu started this war, the ground at home has been shifting inexorably underneath his feet. American public opinion has been turning against this war, and Israel too. I think this does matter. It was on this arena, not the front line in Southeast Asia, that Lyndon B. Johnson lost the Vietnam War. It took 7 long years and another president to pull out of Saigon. But historians now agree the turning point was February 1968. CBS had just sent its most trusted anchor, Walter Cronkite, to Vietnam after the Tet Offensive. After watching Cronkite pronounce the death knell of the American war effort with the phrase that it was mired in stalemate, LBJ reportedly said, "If I've lost lost Cronkite, I've lost middle America. Could the same thing be happening now? As Trump was in his Situation Room, his vice president, JD Vance, was deeply engaged in a 3-hour chat with America's biggest, some say the world's biggest, podcast host, Joe Rogan, a former reality TV host, a martial artist, whiskey drinking, weed smoking, gun toting, UFC commentator. Rogan is the latest incarnation of America's macho man. Vance made 3 claims to Rogan that a serving vice president has never made before. That Trump could not bomb Iran into allowing normal traffic through Hormuz, that Israel was actively trying to undermine both him and his role as negotiator, and that Epstein, the late and disgraced financier, was a Mossad agent. He said, there are some people within Israel's system, we know beyond a shadow of doubt, who are manipulating and trying to change American public opinion to keep the war going on indefinitely, Vance told Rogan. Not just towards any objective, but just indefinitely. Vance said that anyone with $100,000 could buy enough drones to stop all traffic through Hormuz from any number of islands. In other words, he was saying there was no way to make Iran open Hormuz by force. It had to be done through negotiation. Rogan is no Cronkite, but he's the next best thing as a bellwether of what middle America thinks. Vance made sure he was loyal to Trump, but can you remember any serving vice president in any previous administration, particularly a Democrat one, undermining a war that his president was waging in real time? I can't. Vance is thinking of the future, his future. He's responding to a public mood in both his party and the Democrats, which is changing rapidly, despite Israel's best efforts. As Haaretz reports, Israel has spent $100 million in campaigns abroad to improve its image and shape public opinion about its wars in Gaza and Iran. Some of that money went into undermining Vance. A lobbying contract worth $45 million went to a former Trump campaign manager, Brad Pascali. Time magazine reported that Israel used some of that money to pay online influencers who attacked Vance. Pascali has denied the claim that he acted against the administration. But this was not $100 million well spent. The result has been a steady increase in US hostility to Israel. This war has become historically unpopular, even more so than the Iraq War. 77% of independent voters believe the war is not worth fighting, and 63% who lean towards Republicans believe the same thing. Nearly half of the House Democrats voted to cut off aid to Israel last week. An amendment to a State Department spending bill would have eliminated $3.3 billion in funding. It failed by 314 votes to 104, but those 104 votes produced a seismic shock. Even a Democrat veteran like the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, voted against it. Netanyahu has poisoned the US-Israel relationship. Now, there are many caveats. The pro-Israel lobby is baked into the Republican National Caucus. Equally, the same Democrats who voted to withhold aid to Israel are aiming their fire at Netanyahu specifically, not Israel itself. As things stand, according to the polls, Netanyahu's coalition is 10 seats short of being able to secure re-election. A former Army General, Gabi Eisenkot, is currently in pole position to secure a victory without the need of support from Arab parties. Should Netanyahu, known as the Houdini of Israeli politics, fail to escape his final reckoning this time, you can see a mile off what the reaction of the two main parties in America will be. They will both rush to embrace Eisenkot, not for what he says or does, but for simply not being Netanyahu. But history shows that Israel banks its territorial gains each time the baton is passed from one leader to the next. Ariel Sharon made a great hoo-ha about pulling 8,000 settlers out of Gaza in 2005. He was much quieter about putting in between 12 and 15,000 settlers into the West Bank in the very same year. Public opinion in the US is not the only thing to have changed in 4 months. Iran has changed too. It's now clear that the attack had the opposite effect on the Iranian opposition to the Islamic Republic than the one intended. It rallied Iranians to the flag, even those who had been out on the streets in January. Those divisions have not disappeared. They have been postponed in a time of national crisis. As a distinguished American-Iranian academic and former diplomat, Bali Nasr, told me, it's all about the strait, not a misunderstanding or a few lines in the memorandum. He said both sides were trying to change the balance of power. The Iranians want the US to accept Iran's control over the strait and to desist, as using the ceasefire as a stopgap means to build more pressure on Iran. It took the US 7 years from the realization it couldn't win in Vietnam to pulling out. Let's hope it doesn't take Trump this long to realize he cannot win in Iran or in the Middle East.